My fiancée bought lingerie for her boyfriend on our account. So I traced it, proved it, and ended her publicly. I was staring at the high-resolution image of a strange man wearing a $450 Italian silk robe, my thumb hovering over the EXIF data extraction script on my terminal. My fiancée of 3 years had posted the photo to our shared Prime account as a verified purchase review, completely unaware that she had just handed a senior mobile architect the exact GPS coordinates of her infidelity. I make my living writing code that doesn't break. As a senior mobile architect, my entire professional existence revolves around efficiency, flawless execution, and identifying fatal errors before they can crash a system. I view the world through the lens of logic, algorithms, and predictable variables. For 3 years, I believed my fiancée, Sloane, was the most stable variable in my life. She was a marketing director, sharp, ambitious, and seemingly completely devoted to our future. We shared everything. We shared a bank account, we shared a Google Calendar, and, crucially, we shared a Prime household account to streamline our expenses for the $40,000 wedding we were planning for next spring. I trusted her implicitly. I trusted her enough to give her admin access to my life. It was a Wednesday night, just past 1 a.m. The house was dead quiet, save for the rhythmic, mechanical hum of the server rack in the corner of my home studio. The blue light from my 3 massive monitors painted the dark walls of the room as I finalized a massive codebase refactor for a fintech client. Exhausted, I decided to take a 5-minute break to check on the shipping status of a $1,200 8K monitor I had ordered earlier that week. I wanted to see if it had cleared the local distribution center. I opened a new browser tab, navigated to our shared account, and dragged my mouse toward the Returns and Orders button in the top right corner. My hand slipped on the ergonomic mouse pad. The cursor drifted just a fraction of an inch to the left. Instead of clicking the order history, I clicked on Profile and Reviews. The page loaded instantly. I was about to hit the back button when my eyes caught the top entry. It was a glowing, 5-star review posted exactly 3 days ago. The item was a $450 premium Italian silk lingerie and men's robe set. A cold, heavy sensation began to pool in the pit of my stomach. I don't own a silk robe. I sleep in faded tech conference t-shirts and flannel pants. I leaned closer to the monitor, the harsh blue light reflecting off the lenses of my glasses as I read the text Sloane had typed under our shared family name. Purchased as a surprise for my boyfriend. He absolutely loved the fit and the feel. Highly recommend for a romantic getaway. I felt the heat rising in my neck and my vision went blurry with rage. My lungs tightened, suddenly unable to pull enough oxygen from the air-conditioned room. The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded the back of my throat as the words burned themselves into my retinas. Surprise for my boyfriend. I was her fiancée. We hadn't been on a romantic getaway in over 6 months, not since we went to a cabin in Vermont last October. Below the text was a thumbnail image. A verified purchase, customer photo. My fingers were trembling so violently I could barely double-click the image to expand it. The photo was a meticulously framed, faceless shot. It showed a man's heavily tattooed, muscular torso draped in the dark, shimmering black silk of the $450 robe. The man was standing in a dimly lit room, his hands resting casually on his hips, leaning back against a polished oak dresser. I didn't recognize the man's chest. I didn't recognize the tattoos. But as my eyes tracked away from the stranger and focused on the blurred background of the photograph, the icy dread in my stomach crystallized into absolute, blinding clarity. I recognized the grain of the oak wood on that dresser. I recognized the specific angle of the baseboards. The developer instinct in me hijacked my paralyzing panic and replaced it with cold, calculating forensic precision. I right-clicked the image and downloaded the original, uncompressed high-resolution file directly from the content delivery network. I opened my terminal window. The black screen with crisp green text was the only environment where I felt entirely in control. I typed the command EXIF tool image.jpg and slammed the enter key. Lines of metadata flooded the screen, scrolling in a chaotic waterfall of digital information before coming to a stop. I scanned past the camera model, the lens aperture, the ISO settings, and the shutter speed. I was looking for one specific string of data. Modern smartphones automatically embed geographic coordinates into image files unless the user manually disables the feature deep in their privacy settings. Sloane, for all her marketing brilliance, was completely technologically illiterate. There it was. GPS position, 42.3601 degrees north, 71.0589 degrees west. I copied the coordinates, opened a new tab, and pasted them directly into the search bar of Google Maps. The satellite image zoomed in, bypassing states, cities, and neighborhoods, until a bright red pin dropped onto the map. The pin was entirely inside the property lines of my own address. It wasn't just hovering over my house, it was pinned exactly over the east wing of the architecture. The exact location of our guest bedroom. That's when the real bombshell dropped. I dragged my eyes back to the terminal window and looked at the creation timestamp embedded in the EXIF data. Date, time original, Saturday, 22 hours 14 minutes and 3 seconds. Saturday night, 10:14 p.m. The memory hit me with the force of a physical blow. Last Saturday, I wasn't even in the state. I was 400 miles away, standing in a sterile, over-air-conditioned convention center, delivering a highly technical keynote address at a Flutter developer conference. I had spent 3 months preparing that presentation. I took the gig specifically because the speaker's fee was going directly into the escrow account for our wedding venue. I was standing on a stage, exhausting myself to build our future, while she was bringing another man into our home. I refused to operate on assumptions. I needed absolute, undeniable verification. I opened a new browser window and logged into the administrative dashboard of my August Smart Hub, the central brain that controlled the electronic locks on every door of our house. I pulled the raw access logs and filtered the queries by last Saturday's date. At 19:30 to 7:30 p.m., the logs showed a new entry. Sloane had used her master admin privileges to generate a one-time guest code for the front door keypad. I looked at the text string attached to the generated code. She had named the user profile, Xander_trainer. My teeth ground together so hard my jaw ached. Xander, her personal trainer, the ridiculously overpriced, boutique fitness instructor she saw 3 times a week at the luxury gym I paid the $300 monthly membership for. The guy who was always liking her Instagram stories within 30 seconds of her posting them. She had generated a temporary digital key to let him walk right through my front door. But the digital footprint didn't stop there. I needed to know exactly how comfortable they got in the house I paid for. I opened our Prime Video account and navigated to the internal viewing history. The timestamp logged a new session starting at 2300 hours on the specific smart TV assigned to the guest bedroom IP address. Someone had booted up the television and watched 3 consecutive hours of a terrible, mass-market romantic comedy marathon. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had hosted a full, immersive, date night in my guest room, sleeping in the bed I bought, watching the streaming services I subscribed to, wearing the lingerie she bought with our shared funds, while I was out earning the money to buy her a custom floral arrangement for our reception. The sheer, unadulterated disrespect of it threatened to crack my mind in half. I didn't confront her immediately. I didn't throw my phone against the wall. I didn't send a screaming, unhinged text message demanding answers. When you encounter a fatal virus in your system, you don't scream at the computer. You isolate the infected files, you build a containment protocol, and you execute a full system wipe to protect the core architecture. Sloane was no longer my fiancée. She was legacy code that had become entirely corrupted, and I was going to surgically excise her from my environment. I spent the next 48 hours building the trap. First, I went back to the shared account. I found the exact same $450 Italian silk lingerie and robe set. I selected my size, added it to the cart, and hit the button for same-day priority delivery. Next, I needed to remove any possible defense she might try to mount. I knew Sloane. She would gaslight. She would cry. She would claim her account was hacked, or that the photo was a stock image she found online to leave a fake review for promotional points. I wasn't going to leave her a single inch of breathing room. I exported the image from the Amazon review and imported it directly into my high-end 3D rendering software. I spent 6 hours meticulously building a spatial wireframe of the guest bedroom. I mapped the dimensions of the oak dresser, which I knew was exactly 38 inches tall. Using the dresser as an anchor point, I calculated the geometric proportions of the man in the photo. Xander was a known variable. I had met him once at a gym open house. He was exactly 6 feet, 2 inches tall. The mathematical rendering proved, with zero margin of error, that the man standing next to my 38-inch dresser was exactly 74 inches tall. I rendered a 4K video overlay that transitioned the original review photo into a glowing, undeniable 3D wireframe grid mapping out my guest room. Finally, I prepared the eviction protocols. I went into the deepest administrative settings of my home network router. I located the MAC addresses for Sloane's iPhone, her iPad, and her MacBook. I set a delayed trigger to permanently blacklist all of her devices from the Wi-Fi. I logged into our shared bank portal and transferred exactly half of the wedding savings back into my private, individual checking account, leaving only her original contributions. I accessed the August lock dashboard and queued up a script to revoke her biometric fingerprint and delete her personalized PIN code from the hardware. And then, I drafted a post for LinkedIn. Friday evening arrived. The sky outside my living room window bruised into a dark, stormy purple. I knew Sloane scheduled down to the minute. She always finished her Friday wrap-up marketing meeting at 5 p.m. and walked through the front door at exactly 5:45 p.m. She was expecting a quiet night in. She had texted me earlier in the day asking if I wanted to order Thai food and watch a movie. I had replied with a simple, thumbs up emoji. At 5:40 p.m., I initiated the sequence. I walked into the master bathroom and put on the brand new, $450 black silk robe. It felt heavy, cold, and sickeningly smooth against my skin. I walked out into the darkened living room. The only light source was the massive, 75-inch OLED television mounted on the wall above the fireplace. I cast my computer screen directly to the TV. The display glowed brilliantly, showing the Amazon review blown up to cinematic proportions. The text, purchased as a surprise for my boyfriend, was massive. On the right side of the screen, my 3D rendering software looped the wireframe analysis, proving mathematically that her personal trainer was standing in my guest bedroom. I sat down in the center of the dark leather sofa, the silk robe pooling around my legs. I steepled my fingers under my chin, my heart pounding a slow, heavy, terrifying rhythm against my ribs. At 5:46 p.m., the front door lock whirred. The heavy oak door swung open, and the hallway lights flicked on. "Hey babe, sorry I'm a minute late." Traffic on the interstate was an absolute nightmare, Sloane called out, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She turned the corner into the living room, a bright, manufactured smile plastered across her face. She stopped dead in her tracks. The smile evaporated. Her designer purse slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor with a dull thud. The blue light from the 75-inch television reflected in her eyes as she stared at the massive projection of her own 5-star Amazon review. She looked at the text. She looked at the wireframe rendering of Xander's torso mapped over our guest room furniture. Then, her eyes slowly dropped down to the couch, realizing I was sitting in the shadows wearing the exact same shimmering black silk robe. The silence in the room was absolute, deafening, and violently heavy. I could hear her breathing shallowly, her chest rising and falling in rapid, panicked bursts. "It's a great fit, Sloane," I said, my voice terrifyingly calm, cutting through the silence like a scalpel. "The review was right, it feels amazing. But I've found a fatal bug in our household agreement. I've already initiated a full system wipe." What is this?" she whispered, the blood completely draining from her face, leaving her looking like a terrified ghost. "Jack, what are you doing?" "I downloaded the EXIF metadata from your little verified purchase," I stated, leaning forward, the leather of the couch creaking beneath me. "GPS coordinates put the photo in our guest bedroom. The timestamp is Saturday night at 10:14 p.m. The August logs show you generated a one-time guest code for Xander_trainer at 7:30 p.m. The prime logs show you watched a rom-com marathon at 11 p.m. I was at a Flutter conference earning the money for our wedding, and you were letting a personal trainer stretch out his hamstrings in my guest bed. "Jack, please, you don't understand, it was just a stupid mistake," she screamed, lunging toward the coffee table, her hands reaching out toward me, desperate to bridge the physical gap between us. "It meant nothing. I was just stressed with the wedding planning. He was just there." "Please, let me explain. A mistake is a syntax error," I hissed, standing up slowly, towering over her. I felt no sorrow. I felt no heartbreak. I only felt the cold, hard certainty of a developer purging a virus. Generating a one-time smart lock code for another man while I'm out of town is a scheduled deployment. You hosted a date night in my guest room using my Prime subscription. There is nothing to debug here. "You're insane," she screamed, the fake remorse instantly vanishing, replaced by the cornered, venomous desperation of a narcissist who had just been caught. "You tracked my metadata. You rendered a 3D model of a photo. You are a psychotic, controlling freak. I'm calling my sister. I'm getting out of this psycho ward." She reached into her pocket and yanked out her iPhone. She tapped the screen frantically. "Why isn't my Wi-Fi connecting?" she muttered, panic lacing her voice as she stared at the screen. "Jack, turn the router back on." I reached into the pocket of the silk robe, pulled out my own phone, and tapped a single widget on my home screen. "The router is on," I replied calmly. "You just don't have authorization anymore." Before she could process the implication, I opened the LinkedIn app on my phone. I pulled up the draft I had prepared. It was a completely public post, tagging Sloane, tagging Xander, and tagging the luxury gym that employed him. The text read, "I would like to formally thank Xander, last name, and the team at gym name, for the comprehensive, late-night review of my guest room's comfort levels while I was out of town. It's rare to find a personal trainer so dedicated to his clients that he provides verified purchase, home evaluations. Unfortunately, my fiancée Sloane and I are no longer pursuing our merger. Best of luck with your future fitness endeavors." I looked her dead in the eyes, my thumb hovering over the screen. "Jack, don't you dare," she whispered, her eyes widening in absolute horror as she realized what I was about to do. "That will ruin my reputation at the agency. My boss follows you. Please. I'll leave. Just don't post it." I hit send. "Deployment successful," I said. I walked past her, ignoring the hysterical, sobbing breakdown that was beginning to echo through the living room. I walked into the front hallway and grabbed the heavy, hard-shell suitcase I had packed for her 3 hours earlier. I dragged it over to the front door, unzipped the top pocket, and pulled out the matching $450 Italian silk lingerie set she had bought for herself. I laid it gently on top of her folded clothes. Sloane stumbled into the hallway, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face, her chest heaving. She looked at the suitcase, then looked at the front door. The smart lock panel glowed red, indicating her PIN had been permanently erased from the local registry. "I'm a developer, Sloane," I whispered, pulling the front door open and letting the cool, stormy evening air rush into the house. "I don't tolerate legacy code that contains viruses. You're a deprecated feature. Please exit the environment." She stood there for a long, agonizing second, her mouth opening and closing as if trying to find the words to manipulate a machine that had already unplugged her. Finding none, she grabbed the handle of the suitcase, stepped out onto the concrete porch, and didn't look back. I pushed the heavy oak door shut. The deadbolt engaged with a loud, satisfying, mechanical click. I walked back into my home studio, took off the silk robe, threw it into the trash can, and sat back down at my mechanical keyboard. The codebase refactor was still waiting for me. I cracked my knuckles, the sound echoing in the beautifully silent, perfectly secure house. Am I the monster here, or did she get exactly what she deserved?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.